White flag raised. And that off in the Grade 2 John Mulhern Galmoy Hurdle. 4 runners over 3 miles and 14 flights. The late absentee to Farouk Delen, and it's the veteran Somerville boy who makes it early on. From Ashdale Bob, the Devil's coachman, and dropped in as Monkfish. Coming on in between the 2 flights in the straight, Somerville boy and Rachel Blackmore, followed by Ashdale Bob and Jody McGarvey. Third is the Devil's coachman, Mark Walsh. Fourth of the 4, Monkfish, the mount of Paul Townend. Flight number 2 and the last one after 2 full circuits. Order unchanged. It's Somerville boy by a couple of lengths to Ashdale Bob, who's joined for second by the Devil's coachman. And last of all is Monkfish as they head out on the first of 2 complete circuits. Somerville boy builds up a lead of 4 lengths. Moving into second place, the Devil's coachman. Relegated position back to third, Ashdale Bob, with the back mark of Monkfish. Continuing to make the spend into the back straight to flights 3, 4 and 5. Somerville boy tracked by the Devil's coachman. Ashdale Bob won from last, and bringing up the rear is Monkfish at flight number 3. First of 3 up the far side. Somerville boy bowling along out in front of the Devil's coachman. Ashdale Bob, who's losing run, stretches back to the spring of 21. His last but 1, and finally Monkfish on to the 4th. Somerville boy leading the Devil's coachman Ashdale Bob and Monkfish. Soon at their last flight in the back straight, bringing them towards the completion of their first mile. Somerville boy by 2.5 lengths to the Devil's coachman Ashdale Bob. And finally, Monkfish, last of 3 up the bag. And into it, with Somerville boy, followed by the Devil's coachman Ashdale Bob. And content, last of the quartet, to look on from the bag is Monkfish. Heading uphill to the flight before the straight. In race 3, the John Mulhern Galmoy Hurdle. Grade 2 event. Somerville boy, Rachel Blackmore. By under 2 lengths to the Devil's coachman Mark Walsh. Ashdale Bob is just holding on to the 3rd, Jody McGarvey from Monkfish and Paul Townend. Setting their sights in the flight before the straight. Somerville boy, followed by the Devil's coachman Ashdale Bob, still held up as Monkfish. Over the flight before the straight, big and bold Somerville boy increased the lead to 2.5 lengths over the Devil's coachman. Ashdale Bob just 3rd from Monkfish. The quartet covered by under 4 lengths as they turn into the straight to the point at which they started. Soon to repeat the 2 flights in the straight and another circuit. Somerville boy hasn't been headed throughout the first circuit, is followed by the Devil's coachman, the white cap, and then Ashdale Bob. And now moving to the left is Monkfish, the flight which was their first. Somerville boy popping it a couple of lengths clear from the Devil's coachman, rejoined for second by Ashdale Bob. And lastly, Monkfish. On to the flight, that'll be the last one next time. Somerville boy tracked by the Devil's coachman. And then Ashdale Bob and Monkfish, at one time top chasing prospect, was tracking closely to the inside. Filing up in front of us with a circuit to go and 6 flights left to jump. It's Somerville boy by over 2 lengths to the Devil's coachman, who moves on a length and a half in front of the 3rd running Ashdale Bob. 4th of the 4 remains Monkfish. Swinging into the back straight, they're well inside halfway. Somerville boy enjoys a lead of a couple of lengths over the Devil's coachman and then Ashdale Bob and Monkfish. Up the back they go the final time. 6 left to jump. Somerville boy with brought to the outside the Devil's coachman. The Devil's Coachman tracked out there by Ashdale Bob and Monkfish. On up they go to the final mile. 5 hurdles left to jump. Somerville Boy from the Devil's Coachman, Ashdale Bob in between them. Break of a couple of lengths to Monkfish. Centre flight up the far side, 5 out. Somerville Boy. Monkfish landed ponderously in 4th place. 7 furlongs to go. And it's Somerville Boy electing to race right up on the inside. Out wide the other 3. Led along by the Devil's Coachman. Who's followed by Ashdale Bob and Monkfish. Slight mistake, the Devil's Coachman there in second. Heading for the final 3/4 of a mile with 3 flights left to jump. Somerville Boy still to be headed. The Devil's Coachman, Ashdale Bob, joined for third by Monkfish, who's taking closer order on the outside as they climb up to the third last flight. 5.5 furlongs to go. Somerville Boy by under 2 lengths to the Devil's Coachman together for the third. Monkfish and Ashdale Bob. Coming to the flight on the approach to the straight is 3 from the finish. Somerville Boy by a little more than a length to the Devil's Coachman. Break of a length and a half to Ashdale Bob. And Monkfish looks poised on the outside as they jump the flight 1/2 a mile from the finish. Somerville Boy joined on the turn in by the Devil's Coachman, 2 in front of Ashdale Bob. Now nudged in 4th is Monkfish. All to play for as they turn in with 2 flights left, 3 furlongs to go in the John Mulhern Galmoy Hurdle. Somerville Boy fractional leader on straightening up from the Devil's Coachman, who's now been wound up. Then Ashdale Bob, and right in behind them is Monkfish. It's getting tactical as they come down towards the second last. Somerville Boy, the Devil's Coachman this side. On the far side is Ashdale Bob, who makes a 3 in a line. And Monkfish is trying to join them. They've 1 flight left to jump. Any one of the 4, Ashdale Bob joins Somerville Boy, the Devil's Coachman, and Monkfish on the near side barging through. Coming down to the final flight, Ashdale Bob strongly pressed by Monkfish. Somerville Boy in between them, leaving behind the Devil's Coachman, and it's Monkfish who's come from last to first as they run up to the finish. Monkfish is back on the winning trail on reappearance in the John Mulhern Galmoy Hurdle, winning for Paul Tannen and Willie Mullins. The scorer by 6 to 7 lengths from Somerville Boy, who again ran a cracking race, than Ashdale Bob and the Devil's Coachman.
Patrick Mullins joins us now. Patrick, I'm sure overjoyed to see Monkfish back in the number 1 spot after the John Mulhern Galmoy Hurdle. Has he in some ways exceeded expectations today on his return?
No, look, we expected a big run. He's been in training all season, and he'd meant to run there at New Year's Day, and he gave him a little bang the day before, so we waited for today. But we were expecting a big run. He got 2 runs in the end of last season, so he's had a good, clear run of it in training now for over 12 months,
What were you thinking watching the race? They obviously took it very steady in grueling conditions out there. Were you happy enough most of the way around?
I thought that was probably going to suit us, having our first run of the season. He jumped a bit sloppy on the back. I think they were just going so slow, and he wasn't upside anything. The last 2 hurdles when he had to, he jumped very well.
How do you see the future from now? I suppose first and foremost he has to bounce out of the race, okay, but would you like to see him back over fences?
Yeah, well look, he was meant to run over fences obviously in Tramore on New Year's Day, so he's entered in the Gold Cup. He's in stairs as well. I imagine we'll go to Cheltenham now. He is 10, he's probably slightly past his peak, but he is lightly raced. I'm not sure where Willie's going to go, but we're not afraid to go back over fences if the opportunity's there.
He looked to have the world at his feet, didn't he, when he won that Brown Advisory? Is it maybe asking a bit much for him to come back to that sort of level now?
I think it probably is. At 10 years old, it's hard to see him being at his very best, but even he was so good. Even if he's 90%, he's still going to be competitive in those big races.
Patrick, we've just had the feature, the Gosford Chase. Heroic effort from Glenn Gooley, who looked the winner for much of the way. He pretty proud of his run, albeit a bit disappointed not to win.
I sure look gutted. It looked like we were well beat the second last. Then after the last, looked like we were up, and then Rachel's horse got back up and beat us. But fabulous run. He jumped great in front. Paul gave him a super ride, set his own fractions. Coming down over the third last area, Jack Kennedy, Rachel Blackmore, Paul Townend in a row. It was a great race to watch. Unfortunately, came out the wrong side of it.
And just finally, before we let you go, you're mob-handed in a beginner's chase. Who do you think is your best hope?
Look, I think Tackle Move's horse has a huge engine. The chassis hasn't been great, but he'll come on a lot from his first run. Oh My Lord has a little kink in his jumping, and Tackle Move has a big engine.
Fair play. Patrick, as ever, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.